Have you ever found yourself staring into the darkness at 3 o'clock in the morning, wondering why you were awake? The room is completely silent. The rest of the world seems asleep. The moon hangs quietly outside your window. For a moment, time itself feels as though it has stopped. You check the clock. 3:07 a.m. You close your eyes. But sleep doesn't come back immediately. Instead, your mind begins asking questions. Why am I awake? Did I drink too much coffee? Am I stressed? Is something wrong with me? For many people, these moments feel strange, even worrying.
Modern life has taught us that a healthy night should be one long, uninterrupted sleep. 8 straight hours. No waking. No interruptions. Anything else feels like failure. But what if that idea is surprisingly new? What if millions of people throughout history would have looked at your experience and simply smiled? Because to them, waking in the middle of the night wasn't unusual. It wasn't a medical problem. It wasn't something to fear. It was simply part of being human. Tonight, we are traveling back hundreds of years to a time before electricity, before glowing phone screens, before traffic, television, and city lights erased the darkness. A world where the setting sun quietly announced that the day was over. Imagine standing in a small European village sometime during the late Middle Ages. The air is cool. The smell of wood smoke drifts through the narrow streets. Children are finishing their games before darkness arrives. Farmers return from the fields with tired but satisfied faces. A blacksmith closes his workshop. Merchants pack away the last of their goods. Slowly, the village begins to fall silent. There are no bright shop windows, no neon sign, no street lights stretching into the distance. As the sun disappears below the horizon, darkness spreads across the land with remarkable speed. Families retreat into simple wooden homes. A single candle flickers inside each room. Perhaps a small oil lamp burns beside the fireplace. That faint dancing light is all most people have. Outside, the stars begin to appear, one after another. Soon, the sky becomes something most of us rarely experience today. Thousands of brilliant stars scattered across an endless sea of darkness. The Milky Way stretches overhead like a glowing river. Without electric lights, the night sky feels almost impossibly alive. Inside the cottage, supper is simple. Fresh bread, a bowl of vegetable stew, maybe a little cheese, perhaps smoked fish or cured meat if the family has been fortunate. The conversation is gentle. Tomorrow's weather, the condition of the crops, a neighbor's newborn child. Nothing rushed, nothing demanding immediate attention. As the fire slowly settles into guilleung embers, the family prepares for bed. Their beds are nothing like the soft mattresses we know today. Most are stuffed with straw, covered by rough wool blankets or animal skins. In winter, several family members may sleep close together simply to stay warm. Comfort is modest. but exhaustion comes naturally after a full day of physical work. Soon, the room becomes quiet. One by one, everyone falls asleep. Not because a clock says it's bedtime.
Not because an app reminds them to sleep, but because darkness itself gently invites rest. For many people living in parts of pre-industrial Europe, this first period of rest had a name. Historical records describe it as the first sleep. Letters, medical texts, household guides, and even works of literature mention it so casually that historians believe it was widely understood. No explanation was needed. Everyone already knew what the first sleep was. For roughly 3 or 4 hours, the village rested in complete silence. The wind whispered through. There is a special kind of silence in the middle of the night. Not the silence of an empty room, but the silence of a world that has stopped moving. No footsteps, no voices, no distant hum of machines. Just stillness. Deep, complete stillness. In the world we just left behind, the village is now asleep. The first sleep has ended, or is still continuing for some. But for many people, something subtle begins to happen. They wake up. Not suddenly, not in fear, but gently, as if the body itself remembers something the mind does not question. Imagine opening your eyes again. The fire is no longer burning. Only a soft glow of embers remains in the hearth. The room is barely lit. Shapes exist more than details. You can sense the presence of others sleeping beside you, but you cannot fully see them. Outside, the night is at its deepest point. This is the part of the night where time feels different. Hours do not feel like hours anymore. They feel suspended. In many historical writings from pre-industrial Europe, this period between two sleeps appears again and again, not as something strange, but as something ordinary. Some people called it simply the watching. Imagine opening your eyes again. The fire is no longer burning. Only a soft glow of embers remains in the hearth. The room is barely lit. Shapes exist more than details. You can sense the presence of others sleeping beside you, but you cannot fully see them. Outside, the night is at its deepest point. This is the part of the night where time feels different. Hours do not feel like hours anymore. They feel suspended. In many historical writings from pre-industrial Europe, this period between two sleeps appears again and again, not as something strange, but as something ordinary. Imagine opening your eyes again. The fire is no longer burning. Only a soft glow of embers remains in the hearth. The room is barely lit. Shapes exist more than details. You can sense the presence of others sleeping beside you, but you cannot fully see them. Outside, the night is at its deepest point. This is the part of the night where time feels different. Hours do not feel like hours anymore. They feel suspended. In many historical writings from pre-industrial Europe, this period between two sleeps appears again and again, not as something strange, but as something ordinary. Some people called it simply the watching hour, a quiet time between first sleep and second sleep. During this time, life did not pause completely. It simply softened. Some people would quietly get out of bed. They would move slowly through the house, careful not to wake others. A small log might be added to the dying fire, a little more warmth brought back into the room. In wealthier homes, a candle might be lit again, not for activity, but for presence, for awareness. Some would sit near the fire and think, not the kind of thinking we are used to today, fast, anxious, full of notifications and pressure, but slow thinking, the kind that stretches across silence. Thoughts about family, about work, about life itself, about things left unsaid during the day. In some homes, people prayed quietly. In others, they simply sat without speaking at all. There was no sense that something was wrong. No feeling of, I should be asleep. Because sleep, in this world, was not a single continuous block of time. It was a rhythm, a cycle, a natural wave that came and went. And in that wave, this quiet pause belonged. Occasionally, two family members might find themselves awake at the same time. A husband and wife, or siblings sharing a room. They might exchange a few soft words. Nothing important. Just human presence in the middle of darkness. A question about the weather. A reminder about tomorrow's work. Or sometimes, just silence shared between them. Then, after a while, something gentle begins again. The body grows heavy. The mind slows. The fire becomes less important. The darkness outside feels softer than before. Without effort, without planning, sleep returns. This is what historical sources describe as the second sleep, a return to rest that feels natural, almost inevitable. No alarm, no frustration, for thousands of years. The night belonged to darkness, and darkness belonged to rest. But history does not stay still, and neither does human life. Slowly, quietly, the night began to change. It did not happen in a single moment. There was no sudden switch that transformed how humans slept. Instead, it happened step by step, across generations. It began with something simple, firelight that burned a little longer, oil lamps that stretched the evening. Then came gas lighting in cities. For the first time in human history, darkness was no longer absolute. In busy urban centers, streets that once disappeared into night now stayed partially alive after sunset. People could walk later, work longer, talk longer, stay awake longer. The boundary between day and night started to blur, and with that, the natural rhythm of sleep began to shift. What once was a clear separation, wake, work, rest, became more flexible. Then came something even more powerful: the Industrial Revolution. Factories began to define time in a new way, not by the sun, but by the clock.
Work started at fixed hours. Machines demanded schedules. Trains required precision. Schools followed strict routines. For the first time, human life was no longer guided by natural light. It was guided by time itself. And time, now measured in hours and minutes, became something strict, something controlled, something mechanical. In this new world, long nights of divided sleep no longer fit easily. People had to wake early, work early, stay productive in structured ways. Evening routines became shorter. Bedtime slowly moved later, but wake times stayed the same. As a result, sleep was compressed into a single continuous block. Not because the human body demanded it, but because modern life required it. And so, over time, the old rhythm faded. The first sleep disappeared from common language. The second sleep vanished from everyday experience. Even the quiet hours in between began to feel strange. But perhaps the most interesting change was not physical. It was psychological. People began to forget that sleep had ever been different. And when something is forgotten, it becomes invisible. Fast forward to today. It is 3 a.m. A person wakes up in a modern bedroom. The room is dark, silent, still. The first instinct is not curiosity. It is concern. Why am I awake? Is something wrong with me? Am I stressed? Do I have insomnia? Modern life has trained us to see uninterrupted sleep as the only correct form of rest. Anything else feels like failure. But history suggests something more complex. Modern sleep scientists have observed that even today, human sleep naturally moves in cycles. We do not sleep in one perfect, unbroken line. We move between lighter and deeper stages. And brief awakenings during the night are actually quite common, even if we do not remember them. Stress, it is easy to think exposure, that modern life represents routines, progress screens, in every way. Caffeine, faster, all of these louder, can make those awakenings more noticeable, but more beneath connected. All of that. But when it comes to sleep, the story is not so simple. Because sleep is not just a habit. It is one of the oldest rhythms of human life. Older than cities. Older than machines. Older than clocks. And perhaps even older than memory itself. Today, when we wake up in the middle of the night, we often treat it as a problem to fix. We reach for our phones. We check the time. We worry about how many hours are left. We try to force sleep back. And sometimes that very effort keeps us awake longer. But if we step outside modern thinking for a moment and look at the past, a different perspective appears. Across history, human sleep has never been perfectly uniform. Different climates, different cultures, different ways of living, all shaped how people rested. Some slept early, some slept late. Some likely experienced natural pauses in the night, not because of disorder, but because of rhythm. Because the body responds not only to time, but to environment, light, temperature, safety, silence. And for most of human history,
Silence was absolute. No glowing screens, no background noise, no artificial light stretching the night. Only darkness. And in that darkness, the human mind moved differently. So when we wake at 3 a.m. today, it may not always be a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes it is stress. Sometimes it is lifestyle. But sometimes it is simply the body entering a quiet space between sleep cycles. A moment of awareness in the middle of deep rest. A moment that our ancestors may have known very well. Not feared, not analyzed, just lived through, and then gently returned to sleep. Perhaps the most important lesson is this: sleep was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to be natural, and nature rarely moves in straight lines. It moves in waves, in cycles, in rhythms, just like the ocean, just like the seasons, just like the night itself. So the next time you wake up in the quiet hours, there is no need to rush, no need to panic, no need to fight the silence. So our journey
Instead,
ends here.
You can simply
Not with
notice
answers,
but
the
with
stillness
awareness.
of the room.
History
softness
is often loud when it speaks of wars and empires, but sometimes it whispers through something as ordinary as sleep. If you found this journey calming, or even a little thought-provoking, then you are exactly the kind of traveler this channel was made for. Here at History to Sleep, we don't rush through the past. We let it unfold slowly, like a quiet night, like a fading fire, like sleep itself. If you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing, because there are many more